The name Kevin Spacey Fowler was once spoken with reverence, a synonym for breathtaking, unpredictable talent. We begin not in a courtroom, but in the dark. The only light comes from the flickering screen, illuminating the face of a young actor named Anthony Rapp. It's 1986. He is 14 years old, wide-eyed and in a Broadway production of Precious Sons. His co-star, a man already making waves with his fierce intensity, is Kevin Spacey. Spacey, then 26, becomes a mentor, a figure of admiration in the insular world of New York theater. To a teenager, his attention feels like a gift. But one night, an invitation to a party at Spacey's apartment will become a ghost that haunts him for over 3 decades. He would later describe an event that was not a party at all, but a quiet, terrifying encounter. Spacey, drunk, picking him up, carrying him to a bed, and lying on top of him, a moment of confusing, unwanted physicality that lasted only minutes but would define a lifetime. The boy wriggled free and fled, bearing the memory deep, a secret seed planted in shame. For years, Anthony Rapp built a career, a life, but the shadow of that night never fully left him. He was, in the parlance of a future legal battle, a proximate cause of trauma, a man forever tethered to a single violating moment in his past. For 3 decades, Kevin Spacey's star did not just rise. It exploded into a supernova. He was the consummate character actor in a leading man's body, a chameleon who could be charming, sinister, and heartbreaking, often in the same scene. He was Verbal Kint, the crippled con man in The Usual Suspects, whose limp evaporates in one of cinema's greatest reveals. He was Lester Burnham in American Beauty, a middle-aged man awakening with a predatory, inappropriate lust for his daughter's teenage friend. He was Frank Underwood in House of Cards, a Machiavellian politician who would break the fourth wall to confide his darkest ambitions directly to us, the audience. The line between the actor and the roles he played began to blur. The charm felt practiced. The menace felt real. In Hollywood, whispers about his private life, about his preferences and his comportment at parties, swirled for years. They were the industry's open secret, a dangerous rumor mill that churned in the background, muffled by the thunderous applause of his accolades: 2 Oscars, a BAFTA, a Golden Globe. The fortress he built around himself seemed impenetrable, constructed of prestige and power. Then, in October 2017, the dam broke. The Harvey Weinstein scandal erupted, unleashing the Me Too movement, a global tsunami of long-suppressed anger and truth. Women and men found their voices, empowered by the collective roar of shared experience. It was in this charged atmosphere that Anthony Rapp, now a successful actor himself on Star Trek, Discovery, decided to speak. He gave an interview to BuzzFeed News, meticulously detailing the 1986 incident. The article was a seismic event. Here was a beloved star from a beloved franchise accusing one of the most powerful actors in the world of a predatory act against a child. The world held its breath, waiting for the fortress walls to crumble. Spacey's response, when it came, was not a denial. It was a deflection, a masterclass in misdirection that would become a pivotal piece of evidence against his character. He claimed he had no memory of the event, but if it happened, he owed Rapp the sincerest apology for what would have been deeply inappropriate drunken behavior. Then, in a stunning pivot, he chose this moment to publicly come out as gay. The move was widely condemned as a cynical attempt to conflate homosexuality with pedophilia and to shift the narrative. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Netflix severed all ties with him, cutting him from House of Cards and scrapping a Gore Vidal biopic in which he was to star. Other projects were shelved. His agency, CAA, dropped him. The Kevin Spacey brand was now toxic. Rapp's accusation was the first domino. As it fell, it triggered a cascade. The whispers were now shouts. In London, the Old Vic Theatre, where Spacey had been artistic director for a decade, launched an internal investigation. they uncovered a tsunami of allegations. 20 individuals came forward with claims of inappropriate behavior by Spacey between 1995 and 2013. The stories were disturbingly similar: unwanted sexual touching, aggressive, groping hands in dark corners of bars, predatory advances towards young, starstruck men. The man they described was a Jekyll and Hyde figure, the charismatic, generous leader by day and a prowling, handsy predator by night. The British police began their own investigations. In Nantucket, a young man named Heather Unruh came forward. Her son, then 18, had been allegedly groped by Spacey in a bar in 2016. The police had evidence, a cell phone video taken by the young man himself, that appeared to show Spacey's hands all over him. The actor was charged with felony indecent assault and battery. The noose was tightening. The narrative was set. Kevin Spacey was a serial predator and the world was finally holding him accountable. The courtroom dramas began. The first major legal battle was Rapp's civil lawsuit in New York. The trial was a media spectacle. Rapp took the stand, his voice steady but filled with a palpable decades-old pain as he recounted the story of the 14-year-old boy in that apartment. His legal team argued that Spacey's actions were driven by a sexual interest in adolescence. The defense went on the attack. They painted Rapp as an opportunist, capitalizing on the Me Too movement for fame and financial gain. They tried to pick apart his memory, highlighting minor inconsistencies in his story over the years. The climax of the trial was a moment of high drama. Spacey himself took the stand. He was no longer the swaggering Frank Underwood, but a subdued, often emotional man. He denied Rapp's account with a quiet intensity. "I knew I wouldn't have any sexual interest in Anthony Rapp or a child," he testified, his voice cracking. He spoke of his own troubled childhood, of an abusive father. The performance, if it was one, was compelling in its vulnerability. Then came the cross-examination. Rapp's attorney, in a blistering exchange, confronted Spacey with his own 2017 statement. "You said, 'I owe him the sincerest apology,'" the lawyer stated. "Why would you apologize for something you didn't do?" Spacey faltered. He struggled to explain the logic of apologizing for a non-existent event. It was a critical misstep. The jury deliberated, and after just over an hour, they returned with a verdict: not liable. Anthony Rapp had lost. For Spacey, it was a stunning first major victory. His team celebrated. The public, however, was divided. Was this a vindication, or was it the failure of a legal system to adjudicate a he said case from decades past? But the reprieve was temporary. Across the Atlantic, a far more formidable legal challenge was underway. The Crown Prosecution Service in the UK had authorized 4 charges against Spacey related to 3 men. The allegations were more recent, more varied, and far more graphic than Rapp's. The trial at Southwark Crown Court was the main event. The atmosphere was grimly serious, a world away from the theatricality of the New York case. The prosecutor, Christine Agnew, KC, laid out the case with chilling precision. She described Spacey as a sexual bully who took pleasure in making others feel powerless and uncomfortable. The details that emerged from the witness stand were lurid and specific. One man, a driving enthusiast, described how Spacey, after a charity event, groped him so aggressively while he was driving that he almost crashed the car. Another man, who had gone to Spacey's London apartment hoping for career advice, described waking up to find the actor performing a sex act on him. The most shocking testimony came from a third man who alleged that Spacey had drugged him and then sexually assaulted him, leaving him bleeding and traumatized. The defense, led by Spacey's barrister, Patrick Gibbs, KC, presented a different man. This Kevin Spacey was a big flirt, a man in a hurry who was promiscuous and perhaps clumsy, but not a criminal. He argued the encounters were consensual and that the accusers were liars, motivated by money and the allure of seeing a famous man fall. He systematically attacked their credibility, pointing out financial incentives and memory lapses. The trial's turning point, its breathtaking climax, was not a piece of physical evidence, but a performance. Kevin Spacey took the stand in his own defense. For days, he was subjected to a grueling cross-examination. He was confronted with his own words, his own patterns of behavior. Agnew was a relentless inquisitor. She presented him with a pattern: the charity event, the groping in the car, the young man in his apartment, the alleged assault. She called him a man who grabs other people's genitals, to which he calmly replied, "I'm a big flirt." But then she zeroed in on the most serious allegation, the alleged drugging and assault. Spacey's demeanor, which had been calm and collected, began to fracture. His voice rose. He became visibly angry, his famous temper simmering just below the surface. He denied the claims with a ferocity he had not shown before. In a moment of pure, unscripted theater, he turned to the jury, his voice thick with emotion, and declared, "I know the difference between a clumsy pass and a predatory act. I am not a predator." It was a desperate, raw plea. The court held its breath. Was this the real Kevin Spacey? The vulnerable, wronged man? Or was this just another masterful performance from a man who had made a career of deception? The jury was sent away to decide which version of Kevin Spacey they believed. They deliberated for days. The world waited. Finally, they returned. The courtroom was silent. The foreman stood. On the first count, not guilty. On the second, not guilty. On the third, not guilty. On the fourth, the most serious charge of causing a person to engage in penetrative sexual activity without consent. Not guilty. A fifth charge had been previously withdrawn. Kevin Spacey had been acquitted on all counts. He broke down in tears, hugging his lawyers. He was a free man. But freedom in a court of law is not the same as redemption in the court of public opinion. The verdicts, while legally conclusive, did not erase the testimony of 20 men at the Old Vic or the lost civil suit in Nantucket, which was dropped when the accuser invoked the Fifth Amendment, or the haunting consistency of the stories. For his accusers, the legal victory was a bitter pill, a system that had failed to deliver the justice they sought. For Spacey, the victory was Pyrrhic. His career, that magnificent, towering edifice, lay in ruins. He was professionally radioactive. The industry that had once worshipped him now shunned him. He had won his liberty, but he had lost his kingdom. He became a ghost in the machine of Hollywood, a cautionary tale of talent destroyed by alleged predation. The final, chilling image is not of a convicted criminal, but of a man alone in the spotlight he once commanded. The applause now replaced by a silence more damning than any verdict. The most terrifying monster is not the one you convict, but the one you can't. If stories like this keep you hooked, hit subscribe for more.